Revenge. For us. For us. For us.
They slid the envelope across the table like it was a dessert. Thick paper, impeccable crease, a formality dressed as civility. "You understand this is standard," Margaret said, voice smooth as silk and sharp as a blade. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Her hands were steady. The napkin in her lap was not. I stared at the envelope. It smelled faintly of cologne and lemon polish, the scent of rooms meant to impress, not to welcome. "My name is Nora James. I'm 28. I bake morning bread at a little shop on the corner, and I know the exact moment a crust is done by the sound it makes. I know how heat and time turn simple things into something worthy. I also know the sound of a life cooling when someone else decides it's expendable." "Sign here," Margaret said. "It protects the family." They didn't say protect our relationship. They didn't say protect my future. They said protect the family. A thin euphemism for a fortress that has room for their son, and just enough disdain for anyone who didn't arrive there pre-approved. Liam reached across the table, thumb worrying the rim of his glass. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. His jaw worked like he was swallowing a conversation. This wasn't about paperwork. It was performance. A stage where I'd become the line item they could control. A legal shrug. "Keep your hands off our money, our legacy, our name. Leave no space for surprises." My breath tightened. My fingers found the edge of the envelope, and I realized with that calm that cuts that the thing they offered as standard procedure was a choice disguised as inevitability. I didn't react like a frantic heroine. I didn't stand and shout. I folded my hands across my lap and breathed out slowly, the kind of exhale that steadies a blade. The bakery's morning shift, Liam's laugh over burnt muffins, the way my grandmother taught me to count eggs, all of it felt small and vast at once. I felt exposed, not because of money, but because they'd announced where they expected me to stand in the world. Margaret's smile sharpened. "We just don't want complications." Complications. A polite word for assumptions. That night, I walked out of their dining room with the envelope under my arm, not because I was defiant by nature, but because I had a habit I hadn't yet shared with them. I photographed every receipt, saved every email, and kept quiet. I kept track. I didn't leave because I couldn't belong. I left because I refused to be written out before the story had even started. You're watching True Revenge, where every betrayal gets what it deserves. Before that night, my world was much smaller than the Carter dining room. Smaller, but steadier, predictable in the way early mornings are. Quiet streets, warm ovens, the hum of refrigerators waking before the sun. I worked at Harvest Lane Bakery, a place that smelled like brown butter and cinnamon no matter the season. My apron was always dusted in flour, my hair always pulled back loosely, my hands always warm from handling dough. There was nothing glamorous about it, but it grounded me. Routines tend to do that. I didn't grow up with the kind of money the Carters had. My mother worked as a receptionist at a dental clinic. My father drove buses for the city. We didn't have trust funds, lake houses, or family names that got whispered with recognition. But we had small things, soft things. My mom humming while washing dishes. My dad teaching me how to fold a fitted sheet. And me standing in the kitchen learning how to bake because the house felt safest when something was rising in the oven. I met Liam Carter at the bakery, 3 years before the prenup dinner. He walked in wearing a navy coat and a tired expression. An architect working too many hours, looking for something sweet that didn't taste like corporate fatigue. He asked for a cinnamon roll. I was rolling dough. Our eyes met for half a second longer than they should have. He kept coming back, first for pastries, then for conversation. Liam wasn't like his family, or at least he didn't seem like them back then. He liked simple breakfasts, paperbacks instead of hardcovers, and taking long walks instead of attending galas. He once told me the smell of my bakery apron felt more like home than the scent of his parents' marble entryway. I believed him. After 2 years, he asked me to move into his apartment, a modern place with too many clean lines and not enough lived-in warmth. I added plants and throw blankets, trying to soften the edges. He said he liked the way I changed the air. I thought we were building something steady, something real. Still, there were cracks, small ones I tried not to stare at, like the way Liam hesitated when introducing me to his parents the first time, or how Margaret looked me over as though she were appraising fabric, or the way Douglas casually mentioned charities they supported, waiting for my reaction, as if generosity needed applause. At dinners, I often felt like I was holding my breath without realizing it. Liam would squeeze my hand under the table, a silent apology or reassurance, or maybe both. But after the engagement, things shifted. Not in loud ways, in subtle, serrated ones. Liam's parents suddenly wanted to review finances. Margaret began making comments dressed as compliments. "You're very grounded, Nora. You have such a simple lifestyle. How refreshing. You're lucky Liam doesn't care about status." Small slices. Harmless if heard alone. Sharp when collected. Looking back, the signs were there, hovering around the edges of dinners, phone calls, and comments that I ignored because I loved Liam and believed love made differences feel smaller. But pride has a scent too, and the Carter household wore it like perfume. I didn't understand how deep their expectations ran until they handed me that envelope. A prenup wasn't the betrayal. It was the message inside it, the one they didn't say out loud. Know your place. And that's when I realized something I hadn't wanted to face. I wasn't marrying one man. I was marrying a family that believed I should be grateful they allowed it. The night after the prenup dinner, the bakery felt different. The ovens hummed. The fluorescent lights flickered like they always did. But something in me had shifted. A quiet rearranging, like a shelf that had been carrying too much weight for too long, finally giving one soft crack. I didn't cry. I didn't ask why. I just rolled dough until my palms ached. By the time I returned to Liam's apartment, the city outside was washed in cold streetlight. Liam was sitting at the counter, elbows on his knees, staring at the prenup envelope as though it might explode if he blinked wrong. "Nora," he said softly when I walked in, "we should talk." He looked different in that moment, smaller, almost apologetic. But apologies require choices, and Liam had already made his. I took off my coat, hung it slowly on the hook. The silence between us stretched thin. "You should read it," he said, nodding toward the envelope. "It's not as bad as it looks." I didn't sit. "Then tell me what it is." He swallowed. "It's protection." "For who?" "For everyone." I let that sit in the air, unchallenged, heavy. He rubbed the back of his neck, a nervous habit I used to find endearing. Now, it felt like a shield. My parents just want to make sure nothing gets messy if. If what? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "If things don't work out," he whispered. There it was. The truth he'd been trying to sand down into something palatable. "So they're planning our failure," I said, "before our wedding." "It's standard, Nora. You know that." "Do you know that?" I asked. "Or did they tell you that?" He flinched, not visibly, but enough that I saw it in the soft collapse of his shoulders. I opened the envelope, slid out the papers. The first lines were written in language so clinical it might as well have been a medical consent form. In the event of dissolution, in the event of dispute, in the event of financial claim. I kept reading until I reached the clause that made something inside me freeze. The spouse, Nora James, acknowledges that she brings no significant assets, business value, or financial contribution to the union. A legal declaration of worthlessness, signed by Liam's parents, pre-approved for my future husband's signature. I placed the papers down carefully, as though touching something fragile. So this is how they see me, I said. Liam opened his mouth, closed it, struggled. They just want clarity. Then why does it read like a character assassination? He stood, walking toward me. Nora, please. It's not personal. It's not personal, I repeated, tasting each word. So you're telling me it doesn't matter who you marry? Your parents would write this about anyone? He hesitated, and that was my answer. It wasn't any spouse. It was me. I thought the betrayal would feel sharp, a cut, a wound, a break. But it didn't. It felt cold, a slow frost spreading through my chest. Did you read this before dinner? I asked quietly. He didn't speak. Liam. His silence said everything. You agreed, I whispered. The air shifted. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside. And that's when the real break happened. Not because of the prenup, not because of his parents, but because Liam had chosen convenience over conviction. He didn't fight for me. He didn't question them. He just folded himself neatly into their expectations and hoped I would follow. For a long moment, I said nothing. Silence has a way of revealing truth faster than questions ever will. I need time, I finally said, to think, to feel, to breathe, to reclaim something they had quietly tried to take. My dignity. But Liam heard something else. He panicked. Please don't overreact. Overreact. The word slid into my chest like a cold blade. I'm not reacting, I said. I'm realizing. He reached for me. I stepped back. Not dramatically. Just enough. And that's when the quiet shift happened. I didn't feel anger anymore. Just accuracy. I put the prenup back in the envelope, closed it neatly, and placed it on the table. I won't sign this, I said, but I'm not fighting you tonight. Liam exhaled in relief, misinterpreting my calmness as surrender. He had no idea what calm really meant. As I walked to the door, I paused. Liam, I said softly. He looked up, hope flickering. That was the moment I stopped begging and started taking notes. The morning after the prenup incident, the bakery ovens glowed like they always did, steady, warm, predictable. But I wasn't. I moved through the shift on muscle memory alone. Knead, fold, rest, repeat. Calm on the outside, calculations unfolding silently underneath. I didn't text Liam. I didn't reread the prenup. I didn't try to argue myself back into the version of my life that existed before last night. Instead, on my lunch break, I walked 3 blocks to a quiet brick building with a brass plaque. Elaine Porter, Family Law. I'd met Elaine once years ago. She came in for almond croissants on Sundays. Calm, neatly dressed, the type of woman whose silence could dismantle a room. I trusted her, without knowing why. Her receptionist recognized me. Do you have an appointment? No, I said, but I need help. 5 minutes later, I was in Elaine's office. She didn't start with small talk. She pushed her glasses up the bridge of her nose, studied my face, and said, "Tell me what happened." I told her everything. Not dramatically, just plainly. A psychological autopsy of the night before. Elaine listened the way lawyers do. Still, focused, gathering threads. When I placed the prenup on her desk, she didn't rush to open it. She scanned the envelope first, the handwriting, the weight of it. Only then did she pull the papers out. The room felt smaller when she reached the clause that had gutted me, the one declaring I brought no significant value to the marriage. Her jaw flexed. "Did you agree to anything verbally?" she asked. "No. Did you sign anything?" "Never." She nodded once, sharply. "Good." She lifted the next page and went still, completely still. "What is it?" I asked. Elaine pointed to a section near the bottom, one I hadn't noticed. A clause that stated, "In the event of marital dissolution, the spouse relinquishes any right to make public statements regarding the Carter family's financial affairs, business holdings, or internal disputes." My stomach tightened. Why would they add that? Elaine set the paper down like it was contaminated. Because they're hiding something. I felt the air shift. The bakery, Liam, his parents, all of it suddenly rearranged into a shape I hadn't recognized before. Elaine leaned back. "Nora, prenups protect assets. They don't usually include gag orders unless someone is terrified of exposure." Exposure. The word echoed. She clasped her hands. "I need to ask something, and answer honestly. Has Liam ever mentioned financial trouble? Family tension? Discrepancies? Being pressured?" I shook my head, but then fragments surfaced. Liam's stress during tax season. Douglas' sudden interest in reviewing liabilities. Margaret correcting him sharply at dinners whenever he mentioned his father's investments. His sister Camille joking, too casually, about their parents moving money faster than the market crashes. Pieces that hadn't formed a picture until now. Elaine exhaled, slowly. Something's not right. Neither of us spoke. Not for a full minute. The silence felt heavier than the oak desk between us. Then Elaine stood. "Let me show you something." She walked to a file cabinet, pulled out a thin folder, and placed it in front of me. "This is a public filing," she said. "The Carter family business is under quiet audit. Not public scandal, not yet, but they're being watched." I blinked at the documents, numbers, dates, tax records, all faintly out of alignment. "How did you know to look them up?" I asked. Elaine gave a faint smile. "When wealthy families panic, they all move the same way. Fast paperwork, harsh prenups, sudden silence." A cold understanding slid through me. They weren't preparing for Liam's marriage. They were preparing for a potential collapse and trying to make me legally responsible for nothing and legally silent about everything. I sat back, letting the truth settle. Not sharp, not explosive, just clean, precise clarity. Elaine tapped the prenup. "This isn't a document. It's a warning. They're insulating their assets, and they assumed you wouldn't look deeper. That's why they said it wasn't personal." I whispered. "It was absolutely personal," Elaine corrected. "They think you're powerless." Something clicked inside me, soft but undeniable, like a lock turning. I didn't feel hurt anymore, or even angry. Just accurate. Elaine folded her hands. "Nora, if you want to walk away, you can. Quietly, cleanly, legally protected." I wasn't sure if she expected my answer. "I'm not done yet," I said. "Not until I know everything they're hiding." Elaine's eyes sharpened with respect. "Then we'll proceed," she said. "Truth isn't enough. We'll get balance." And I knew then. I wasn't alone. I left Elaine's office with a folder under my arm and a different kind of weight in my chest. Not fear, not heartbreak. Direction. The bakery smelled like warm sugar and cinnamon when I returned, but even the familiar comfort didn't blur the clarity forming inside me. I wasn't the same woman who'd cried in my car the night before. I moved quietly through the rest of my shift, but my mind wasn't on dough or timers or morning orders. It was on timelines, signatures, financial trails, and the one fact the Carter family had overlooked. Silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. That evening, I sat at my tiny kitchen table, a chipped, thrifted thing that had held more bills than meals, and laid everything out. Receipts, notes, voicemails, the prenup copy, Elaine's audit documents. My apartment was quiet except for the refrigerator hum and the soft scrape of paper. Each sound felt deliberate, like steps in a choreography. Elaine called at 8:14 p.m. "We'll start with protections," she said. "I'm drafting a cease and harassment notice. If Margaret or Douglas tries to pressure you again, it becomes legally actionable." I nodded, even though she couldn't see. "Next," she continued, "I'll file a request for voluntary financial disclosure. They won't comply, but their refusal will be documented. Documentation, evidence, leverage, all the things they assumed I knew nothing about. And Nora," she added, "if Liam contacts you, keep communication minimal. Text only. Direct. No emotion." I understood. Every word needed to stand alone, clean, admissible, undeniable. After the call, I drafted my own list, quiet steps, simple steps, steps they wouldn't see coming. 1. Stop all wedding planning immediately. No deposits. No bookings. No obligations tied to my name. 2. Collect every text, voicemail, and message from the Carters, especially the condescending ones, the ones dressed as advice but sharpened like knives. 3. Begin journaling each interaction, time-stamped. A documentary device Elaine insisted on. 4. Say nothing. To anyone. Not to co-workers. Not to friends. And especially not to Liam. Let them think the storm passed. Let them think I was folding. Quiet was my armor. Stillness my weapon. The final item on my list was simple, only 3 words. Watch. Everything carefully. I closed the notebook, my hand steady. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was seeking accountability. And the Carters were about to learn the difference. The unraveling didn't begin with shouting or confrontation. It began with an email. A single, concise message from Elaine sent to the Carter family at 9:12 a.m. on a Tuesday. The kind of email that doesn't raise its voice, but still shakes every wall it touches. Subject line: request for full financial disclosure and proposed amendments. The body was clinical, polite, and devastating. Elaine outlined every clause of their prenup that was illegal, exploitive, or financially coercive. She highlighted contradicting statements from Margaret and Douglas. She requested income records, property listings, tax filings, and documentation for every account they mentioned during the dinner. She CC'd Liam. She CC'd me. And she ended with, "Failure or refusal to comply will result in formal action." Silence followed, not peace, fear disguised as stillness. By noon, Douglas responded with a flustered paragraph about misunderstandings and family intentions. At 12:27 p.m., Margaret sent a follow-up message dripping in faux grace. "We believe this level of scrutiny is unnecessary and inappropriate." Elaine replied within 3 minutes. "Then you'll need to justify the clauses requiring Nora to surrender future income, savings, and asset rights. A court will need clarity." The Carter composure evaporated. The first crack appeared when Liam showed up at the bakery. Eyes tired, suit wrinkled. A man being crushed by the weight of 2 worlds. "Nora, can we talk?" I stepped outside, wiping flour off my hands. He exhaled shakily. "My parents, they're panicking. What did your lawyer do?" I kept my voice steady. She asked for transparency. He flinched just slightly. "That email made it look like we were trying to use you." I looked at him, really looked, and saw the truth. he'd been hiding under softer words. You weren't trying, I said quietly. You already did. He swallowed hard. I didn't know about most of that prenup. I swear. But maybe something like it is normal? I mean, you don't have much to protect. The sentence died in his throat as soon as he heard himself. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just stepped back. Something in him broke when I didn't argue. Silence can feel like judgment. The second crack came from Margaret. She called me at 7:03 p.m., the first time she had ever used my number personally. Nora, she said, voice trembling with anger disguised as etiquette, you have involved outsiders in a private family discussion. Your lawyer handed me a contract. I said. I handed it to mine. You're blowing this out of proportion. No, I replied softly. I'm putting it in proportion. She inhaled sharply. Then came the line that sealed her fate. You need to understand your position. Liam is offering you stability, security, a future. Don't sabotage the best opportunity you'll ever have. I didn't feel anger anymore, just accuracy. Thank you for clarifying, I said. Your words have been documented. She gasped. The call ended. The final crack was the counteroffer. Elaine drafted it. I read it twice, stunned by its elegance. A revised agreement stating: 1. All premarital assets remain separate. 2. All future income, savings, and property earned by me remain exclusively mine. 3. No claim to my business if I open one in the future. 4. And if divorce occurs due to infidelity, emotional abuse, or coercive financial behavior, I receive 30% of marital assets. The last clause was the dagger. When the Carters opened it, I imagine the room went still. At 8:21 the next morning, Liam texted, I can't sign this. My parents won't allow it. Please reconsider. I stared at the phone for a while. Then I typed 4 words. Then we're done here. I blocked his number, not out of rage, out of certainty. The next week, the Carter family withdrew the engagement announcement from the newspaper. The wedding planner sent a polite cancellation notice. I returned the ring in a small velvet box left at their door. And that was it. No dramatic showdown. No shouting, just silence, the kind that comes after a storm reveals what it truly destroyed. They called it miscommunication to their friends. They called me unreasonable. They called Elaine predatory. But I called it something else. Closure. In the weeks that followed, life didn't transform in cinematic flashes. No triumphant music. No dramatic sunrise. Healing, I learned, is quieter than that. It came in small, steady moments, the kind you only notice when the noise finally fades. I returned to my routines. Early mornings at the bakery. Warm dough under my palms. The same apron. The same counter. The same hum of ovens coming alive before dawn. But I wasn't the same. There was more air in my lungs. More silence in my mind. More space where anxiety used to sit. People ask what happened with Liam. I tell them the truth, the simple, uncluttered version. We weren't building the same future. Sometimes they nod in sympathy, sometimes in relief, as if they sensed something I didn't. Either way, the conversation ends there. I never saw the Carters again. I heard rumors, though, whispered through customers who knew someone who knew them. The prenup scandal embarrassed them socially. Margaret pulled back from her volunteer boards. Douglas stepped down from a committee. Liam moved to another firm across town. None of it brought satisfaction. Just distance, the clean kind. On a soft Sunday morning, as I rearranged pastries in the display case, Elaine stopped by for coffee. She leaned against the counter with that knowing look lawyers seem to be born with. You look lighter, she said. I feel lighter, I answered. You made the right decision, Nora. I smiled, small but real. I didn't win anything, I said quietly. I just stopped losing myself. She tapped the counter gently. That's what winning actually is. Later that week, I picked up a small journal. Nothing fancy, just a softcover notebook, and wrote down one sentence on the first page. Peace wasn't loud. It was earned. It felt right, like a closing line to a chapter one didn't realize I'd survived. Life moved forward. Slow, steady, mine. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't living in someone else's shadow. I wasn't proving myself. I wasn't shrinking to fit a table I was never meant to sit at. I was just Nora, a woman who learned that walking away isn't giving up. It's choosing yourself, something the Carters never expected me to do. This was true revenge, where pain becomes purpose, and every betrayal gets what it deserves.